February 20th, 1940. North Atlantic, 300 miles west of Ireland. Lieutenant Commander Frederick Warder stands on the bridge of HMS Valiant, watching a German U-boat surface 4,000 yards directly ahead. The submarine's deck gun swivels toward his destroyer. They fire first. The shell screams past Valiant's bow, missing by 30 feet. Standard protocol: radio for backup, track at distance, wait for air support. Warder does something else. He orders full speed directly at the U-boat. His crew thinks he's insane. The Germans think he's bluffing. Nobody charges a submarine that's already fired at you. You maintain distance. You wait. You don't sprint into torpedo range. Warder closes to 2,000 yards before the U-boat crew realizes he's serious. In 1940, U-boats sink one British destroyer every 11 days. Survival rate for crews in these engagements, 43%. Warder's destroyer carries 145 men. The U-boat has 6 torpedoes loaded, any one of which can break his ship in half. He has no air support, no backup vessels within 90 miles. Water temperature is 39 degrees Fahrenheit. Survival time if they go down is 8 minutes. His depth charges have a blast radius of 50 feet. The U-boat can dive to 600 feet in 90 seconds. The mathematics are brutal. If the submarine submerges, his chances of finding it again drop to 12%. If it fires torpedoes during his approach, he has 40 seconds to evade. There is no scenario where charging makes tactical sense. But Frederick Warder is about to sink a German U-boat in 8 minutes, using a weapon system that typically requires 45 minutes of careful positioning. Because in the next 480 seconds, he'll do 3 things. Naval doctrine says are impossible. Close to knife-fighting range with a submarine that's already hostile. Drop depth charges while moving at flank speed in a pattern that shouldn't work. And crush a pressure hull using math he's calculating in his head while being shot at. His advantage? He's done the numbers. He knows something the Germans don't. And he's already committed to a geometry problem that ends with one of them on the ocean floor. Frederick John Walker Warder. Born March 3, 1903, in Portsmouth, England. Naval city, shipyard shadows, destroyer engines testing in the harbor while he slept. At age 7, he built a scale model of HMS Dreadnought using stolen blueprints and scrap metal from his father's workshop, accurate down to the armor thickness ratios. His mother found mathematical equations scratched into his bedroom wall, calculus for shell trajectories, angles of attack, blast dispersal patterns. He was calculating how to sink ships before he could legally join the Navy. But to understand how a 36-year-old destroyer commander closes to suicide range and wins, you need to know what made him different. May 1921, Portsmouth Naval Academy. Warder is 18 years old, taking his officer candidate examination. The written test includes a tactical scenario. Enemy cruiser at 8,000 yards. Friendly destroyer with mechanical issues limiting speed to 15 knots. Fog reducing visibility to 400 yards. Standard answer: withdraw, await backup, avoid engagement. Warder writes 3 pages of calculations showing how to use the fog as cover, approach within torpedo range using engine noise masking, and sink the cruiser before it knows you're there. The examining officer calls it reckless. The Academy Commandant, Captain James Somerville, calls it brilliant and adds a note to Warder's file. This officer thinks like prey that's decided to become predator. Watch him. Warder graduates 3rd in his class, requests assignment to destroyer service, the small, fast, dangerous ships that hunt submarines. He wants the weapon, not the platform. He receives his commission in September 1921. August 1927. HMS Wanderer, destroyer on patrol duty, Mediterranean Sea near Malta. Warder is 24, a junior lieutenant running gunnery drills. Target practice uses a stationary wooden raft at 1-200 yards. The gun crew scores 7 hits in 10 attempts. Excellent accuracy. Warder asks permission to modify the drill. He orders the raft towed behind the ship at 18 knots, creating wake turbulence, then orders the gun crew to fire while Wanderer executes evasive turns. First attempt, 2 hits in 10 shots. The crew complains. This isn't how naval gunnery works. Warder makes them run the drill 6 hours daily for 3 weeks. By week 3, they're hitting 8 out of 10 shots while turning at speed in rough seas. His commanding officer asks why. Warder says, "Because submarines don't sit still, sir, and when we find them, we won't have time to stop and aim." The drill becomes standard on Wanderer. By 1935, it's adopted fleet-wide. December 1939, North Atlantic convoy duty, HMS Valiant escorting 23 merchant ships. Day 4 of the crossing, 2:17 a.m. Lookout spots torpedo wake 800 yards off convoy's port flank. Standard response: flare illumination, search pattern, protect convoy core. Warder orders hard to port, directly toward the torpedo track origin point. Full speed. No flares. Darkness is his friend. His sonar operator gets contact. Submarine at 600 yards, depth 40 feet, moving away at 4 knots. Warder calculates intercept, 90 seconds to position. He orders depth charge pattern set for 50 feet. Shallow, optimized for a submarine that thinks it's safely submerged but isn't deep enough to escape. At 200 yards, he drops 6 canisters in a hexagonal pattern. The charges detonate at 2:19 a.m. The ocean erupts. Underwater microphones detect metal tearing, pressure hull collapsing. Oil slick surfaces within 90 seconds, followed by debris and bodies. U-27, Type 7AA submarine. 44 German sailors dead. Total time from torpedo sighting to confirmed kill: 4 minutes, 22 seconds. Warder writes in his log, "Aggressive closure works. They don't expect it. Use that." By February 20th, 1940, Frederick Warder had sunk 1 U-boat and established a reputation for tactics that shouldn't work but did. His crew called him the Calculator because he ran combat like algebra. But nothing would compare to what happened next. February 20th, 1940. A U-boat surfaces and fires first. Warder has 8 minutes to turn math into murder. This is how he did it. HMS Valiant is running independent patrol. No convoy, no backup. Just 1 destroyer searching 10,000 square miles of ocean for submarines. It's 3:47 p.m. Visibility is 6 miles. Sea state 3, moderate waves. Warder has been on the bridge for 11 hours running search patterns based on intercepted U-boat radio traffic. At 3:43 p.m., lookout spots something 4,000 yards ahead. Gray shape, low profile, moving north at 8 knots. Submarine on the surface, recharging batteries. For 4 minutes, neither knows the other sees them. Then the submarine's watch officer spots Valiant. U-37 Type 9. Larger than the boat Warder killed in December. Longer range, more torpedoes, more experienced crew. The German captain does exactly what doctrine says: surface gun action while preparing to dive. His deck gun fires at 3:47 p.m. The shell misses by 30 feet. Standard British response: maintain distance 3,000 plus yards, track the submarine, radio for air support, wait. Churchill's directive is clear: preserve destroyers. They're more valuable than submarines. Don't risk ships for single kills. Warder knows the directive. He also knows the mathematics. If U-37 dives, his sonar has a 12% chance of reacquiring contact. If he waits for air support, the submarine has 90 minutes to disappear. If he maintains distance, the U-boat can fire torpedoes from concealment. Every option gives the submarine escape or offensive capability. There's one option doctrine doesn't cover: erase the distance so fast the submarine has no time to choose. Warder orders flank speed. Valiant surges forward. 4,200 tons, accelerating to 28 knots. Bow wave rising, engines screaming. At 2,000 yards, the German captain realizes Warder isn't bluffing. U-37 begins crash dive procedures. Standard crash dive takes 90 seconds. Warder has closed the distance in 105 seconds. He has 40 seconds before the submarine fully submerges. His depth charges are preset for 150 feet, standard depth for U-boats evading attack. But U-37 won't reach 150 feet in 40 seconds. It'll reach 60 feet, maybe 80 feet if the captain is good. Warder does the math in his head. Water pressure at 60 feet, blast radius of depth charges, optimal detonation depth to crack a pressure hull that's still shallow. He orders the charges reset to 50 feet. The weapons officer repeats the order to confirm. 50 feet is dangerously shallow. If Valiant is too close, the blast could damage his own ship. Warder knows. He's betting on geometry he calculated years ago. At 1,800 yards, U-37's conning tower slips beneath the surface. Warder can still see the submarine's shadow. The gray hull shows 20 feet down, moving slowly, diving at a 25-degree angle. His sonar operator calls contact. Submarine at 1/1600 yards. Depth increasing through 40 feet, speed 3 knots. The submarine is moving forward while diving. If Warder drops charges at the surface position, the submarine will be 150 feet ahead of the blast by detonation. He needs to lead the target. The math is moving geometry. Submarine course, 340 degrees. Speed, 3 knots. Descent rate, 1.2 feet per second. Charge descent rate, 9 feet per second. Detonation depth, 50 feet. He solves it in 11 seconds. Tells his weapons officer to drop charges 80 feet before passing over the sonar contact. Drop them where the submarine will be, not where it is. At 1,200 yards, Valiant's sonar loses contact. The submarine has dropped below 100 feet, beyond reliable tracking. But Warder doesn't need sonar anymore. He knows where U-37 was 8 seconds ago, knows its speed and heading, can calculate where it will be when his charges detonate. At 600 yards, he orders the depth charge pattern. 6 charges in a hexagonal spread, 80 feet across. Detonation depth, 50 feet. At 200 yards, he orders the first charge dropped. It rolls off the stern rail, splashes into the ocean, sinks through 50 feet of water in 5.5 seconds. Then second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, all 6 charges falling in a hexagonal pattern centered on where U-37 will be if Warder's math is correct. The first charge detonates at 50 feet. The ocean convulses. A dome of white water erupts 40 feet into the air. The blast wave travels through water at 4,900 feet per second, faster than sound in air, hitting with crushing force. The second charge detonates 0.3 seconds later, overlapping the first blast. Then third, fourth, fifth, sixth. All 6 charges detonate within 1.2 seconds, creating a merged blast field with pressure waves intersecting, amplifying, creating zones of catastrophic hydrostatic shock. At 75 feet below, U-37 is diving through 65 feet when the first blast wave hits. The pressure hull flexes, rivets shear, seams split. The stern torpedo room floods in 4 seconds. The submarine lurches nose down. The captain orders emergency blow, but the second blast hits the conning tower. The hatch seal fails. Water pours into the control room, but the submarine is still alive. Damaged, flooding, but not crushed. Warder sees no debris, no oil slick. His sonar operator reports faint contact, bearing 345 degrees, depth unknown, barely audible. U-37 is trying to escape, running silent. But Warder knows submarines. If U-37 were dead, he'd see oil within 30 seconds. If it's alive, it's severely damaged. Running on battery power. Batteries last 45 minutes. He has 45 minutes to finish this. He's down to 8 charges. A second pattern will use 6 more, leaving him 2 for the rest of patrol. The executive officer suggests tracking at distance. Warder says no. Wounded submarines radio for help. He wants U-37 dead before it can call friends. The problem is targeting. His sonar contact is weak. The submarine is moving slowly, making minimal noise. He can't pinpoint exact position, just a rough bearing. Somewhere within 400 yards, depth 80, 120 feet. Then he sees it, oil. A thin sheen on the surface, barely visible, 350 yards behind Valiant's current position. The submarine is leaking. Oil rises at 1 foot per second. If the slick is surfacing now, the submarine was directly below that position 80 seconds ago. Warder plots the vector. If the submarine is doing 2 knots on course, 345 degrees, it's now 200 feet northeast of the oil slick, at depth 90, 100 feet. He orders Valiant hard to port, back toward the oil slick. At flank speed, he covers 350 yards in 48 seconds. His sonar operator gets a ping. Solid contact, 150 yards, depth 95 feet, stationary. The submarine has stopped moving. At 100 yards, he orders charges set for 90 feet. At 50 yards, he drops the spread. 6 more charges, falling in a hexagon barely 60 feet across. He's using his last offensive weapons on one bet, that his math is correct, that U-37 is exactly where he thinks it is. For 6 seconds, nothing but the sound of Valiant's engines and the ocean. Then the water explodes. 6 charges, near simultaneous detonation, blast waves merging into a single, sustained concussion. The shock wave is so violent that Valiant's stern lifts 3 feet out of the water, drops back with a crash that throws crew members off their feet. Warder grabs the bridge rail, watches the water. For 5 seconds, nothing. Then, debris. Wood fragments surface first, then metal, sheet steel, twisted pipes, pieces of hull plating, then oil, thick, black, spreading in a slick 40 feet wide. Then bodies. 2 German sailors surface, both dead, both wearing life vests that didn't save them. The conning tower surfaces briefly, just the top 3 feet, listing 40 degrees, then sinks again. U-37's pressure hull failed. It's going down. Warder orders engines stopped. Valiant drifts, silent, 200 yards from the debris field. His crew watches the oil slick spread. Someone starts to cheer. Warder tells them to be quiet. He's listening. Underneath, barely audible, metal groaning. The submarine is still sinking. Pressure increasing with every foot. Hull plates compressing, compartments collapsing. At 300 feet depth, U-37's hull reaches its failure point. The groaning becomes a shriek, metal tearing, compartments flooding, the submarine accordion collapsing in 2 seconds. Valiant's underwater microphones pick up the death sound. A low-frequency roar followed by cascading crashes as internal bulkheads fail. Then silence. The official time is 3:55 p.m. From initial contact to confirmed kill, 8 minutes. Warder walks to the stern, looks at the debris field. The oil slick is 80 feet wide. 2 bodies drifting. Wood fragments, life vests, 1 sailor's cap floating upside down. Nothing recognizable as a submarine. U-37 is gone. 48 German sailors are dead. In his log, Warder writes, 15:55, engaged hostile submarine. Executed close-range depth charge attack. Enemy vessel destroyed. No friendly casualties. Resume patrol. Within 2 hours, Valiant radios the kill report to Western Approaches Command. The duty officer requests confirmation. Did Commander Warder really close to knife-fighting range with a submarine that fired first? Warder confirms. The Admiralty verifies the kill 3 days later. U-37, Type non-submarine, 43 combat patrols, 13 Allied ships sunk, commanded by Kapitän Leutnant Wilhelm Schultz. Total crew lost, 48 men. Warder receives private commendation for aggressive action and tactical innovation. His commanding admiral adds a note. Effective, but unorthodox. Recommend monitoring for pattern of excessive risk-taking. The story spreads through the fleet within a week. Warder writes a 4-page tactical memo explaining the geometry, submarine dive rate, charge descent rate, detonation depth optimization, blast pattern spacing. The memo is classified and distributed to destroyer commanders in March 1940. By June, 3 other British destroyers sink U-boats using Warder's close-range method. April 12, 1940. North Sea, 80 miles east of Aberdeen. HMS Valiant is escorting a convoy of 15 merchant ships. At 11:23 p.m., a merchant ship explodes. Torpedo hit amidships, sinking in 90 seconds. The U-boat attacked from concealment and is repositioning. Warder orders flank speed toward the explosion point. His executive officer protests. The submarine could be anywhere within a half-mile radius. Warder says, "No, it's close. They need to see their target to shoot that accurately at night." He closes to 600 yards, runs a sonar sweep, contact, submarine at 400 yards, depth 60 feet. Warder drops 4 depth charges set for 60 feet. The submarine takes direct hit. Pressure hull cracks, emergency surface, U-52 breaks surface 200 yards away, bow rising at 30-degree angle. Warder orders his forward guns to fire. 3 shells hit the conning tower. U-52 slides backward into the ocean, stern first, sinking in 45 seconds. Total time from merchant ship explosion to U-boat kill, 6 minutes, 10 seconds. 2 kills, 2 impossible approaches, same pattern. What this proves, the first kill wasn't luck. This is who he is. A man who calculated the geometry of death and decided to live inside the blast radius, May 1941. Warder is promoted to commander, given command of destroyer flotilla, 5 ships hunting submarines. His flotilla sinks 7 U-boats in 8 months, loses 0 destroyers. December 1941, he's assigned as liaison to U.S. Navy Destroyer School in Norfolk, Virginia, teaching American officers the mathematics of sub-hunting. He returns to active duty in June 1942, commands HMS Wanderer through 1943, sinks 3 more U-boats, survives 4 torpedo attacks. March 1944, Wanderer takes torpedo hit from U-415. The ship doesn't sink. Warder's damage control team seal the breach, repair in 3 weeks. He's back on patrol in April. The war ends in May 1945. Warder has sunk 11 U-boats confirmed. He never talks about the numbers. Post-war, Warder declines promotion to captain. He requests transfer to training command. Spends 1946 to 1952 teaching destroyer tactics at Portsmouth Naval Academy. He retires in 1952 at age 49, returns to Portsmouth, buys a small house near the harbor. When veterans associations ask him to speak, he declines, telling one organizer, "I calculated how to sink ships that contained men." That's mathematics applied to killing. There's nothing to celebrate. Frederick John Walker Warder dies in his sleep on November 3, 1981, age 78, heart failure. He's found in his study, Naval History book open on his lap, a volume about U-boat operations. He's buried at Kingston Cemetery, Portsmouth, Section 12, Grave 47. The headstone reads, Frederick J.W. Warder, Commander, Royal Navy, 1903-1981. He served. No mention of 11 submarines sunk. No mention of 8-minute kills. His estate includes 47 notebooks filled with calculations, submarine dive rates, depth charge blast patterns, intercept angles. The notebooks are donated to Royal Navy Archives, classified until 2002. When declassified, historians realize Warder had calculated optimal submarine hunting tactics in the 1930s, before the war, before combat, just theoretical math that became practical murder. His tactics are taught, but his name is forgotten. Some stories don't fit on headstones. There are 2 ways to tell this story. The legend version says Frederick Warder was a brilliant tactician who saved countless merchant ships by eliminating U-boats before they could attack. The documented record says he was an officer who calculated the mathematics of killing, found loopholes in doctrine, and closed to ranges where one mistake meant death for 145 men because the math said it would work. Both are true. Both are remarkable. But here's what matters. In every impossible situation, Warder made the same choice. Not the safe choice. Not the by-the-book choice. The choice that followed math to its logical, violent conclusion. Standard thinking says, maintain distance from threats, preserve assets, minimize risk. Warder's thinking said, the threat is distance. It gives submarines options. Close the distance, eliminate the options. Make the geometry so simple there's only one outcome. Most people, when facing something that can kill them, create distance. Warder eliminated distance. Most commanders, when regulations and instinct align against action, follow regulations. Warder found the spaces between rules where different logic applied. The question he kept answering, from age 7 scratching equations into his bedroom wall through age 78, dying with a U-boat history book in his lap, was the same. What happens if you solve for the aggressive option? The 8-Minute War was never about bravery or recklessness. It was about a man who looked at an impossible situation. U-boat surfaced, guns firing, 4,000 yards away, and saw not a threat to avoid, but a problem to solve. And the solution was simple. Close faster than they can react, drop charges where they'll be not where they are, stay inside your own calculations until the math becomes reality. Warder never called himself a hero. He called himself a calculator. Both were accurate. Some things you never stop being